Rev up your engines!
Jimmy D says, what's a good oil filter to last for 10 to 20,000 miles like these new oils go between oil changes? Well, one, I would not go that far unless you did nothing but 60-mile-an-hour highway driving. Then there's not much wear and tear. Now, all the good high-end filters are generally good for 10,000 miles. I personally have never tried one out that lasted for 20,000 miles. 10,000 miles is pretty much it. People, if they're crazy enough to go 20,000 miles between oil changes, usually the company that sells that oil will say change the filter every 10,000 miles, even though you're leaving the oil, and then you add like whatever's in there, a third of a quart or something, to fill it back up again. I would not go 20,000 miles between oil changes. But if you're going to do that, you want to change the filter and use the high-end filters. There's lots of good ones out there, the premium filters. You want one with synthetic filtration and stuff. And they're good for 10, but they're not good for 20. I don't care what anybody says. No, Benita says, my AC works great, but randomly it turns off at higher speeds. What do you think the problem is? Faster you go, the more it's pumping. Check the AC relay. There's a relay. It's a safety relay. And as they age, sometimes as you go at higher speeds, what happens is they overheat and they turn the compressor off. And the AC relays are anywhere from 25 to 55 bucks. They don't cost, I just say, go buy another relay. That might fix it. Now, if it doesn't fix it, odds are your compressor's starting to go out because as you go at higher speeds and spinning faster, it can overheat and then it'll turn itself off. The clutch will start going out. But I don't advise ever replacing a clutch on an AC compressor. I advise replacing the whole thing. The AC compressor with the clutch and everything already is one piece. It's not a smart thing to replace a clutch on an AC system because they go bad because the compressor's going bad. You put a new clutch on, then you find out a month or 6 months later, the whole thing goes out again. You replace the whole thing, not just one or the other. Ian Walter says, Scotty, my car lost coolant a few times, but now it's stopped. Garage pressure tested, no leaks, no white smoke, or head gasket leak. Any ideas? Okay, it lost it, now it stopped. Do you have strange friends who do things like pulling tricks of sucking the coolant out and laughing, ha-ha, he'll never figure out what it is? If you do, that's the culprit. Now, one thing that it could be, just buy another radiator cap. Radiator caps are spring-loaded with rubber. Sometimes they get a little bit weak. When it's really hot outside and the pressure goes up, they'll release some of the coolant. It's cheap enough. Just buy another radiator cap. And don't buy some cheap piece of crap from a discount auto parts store. Buy an original equipment radiator cap. You can go online and buy it. I just did it with my Toyota Matrix. The old one went out, and I just tried an aftermarket one from an O'Reilly's. It didn't work. Then I got an OEM Toyota one online, and it was actually cheaper because they rip you off auto stores. They're not discounted anymore, the auto parts stores. They just rip you off. So I bought it online, and it works perfectly fine. Stephen Lang says, Scotty, if you don't drive your cars much, do you think you should change the oil regularly? If you don't drive your car much, the rule of thumb is you change the oil with full synthetic oil every 5,000 miles or once a year. Now, I don't know what you mean by not driving much. Let's say you only drive 500 miles a year. Okay, then you could push it to 2 years. Then you would change it every 2 years because you're only putting 1,000 miles on in 2 years, and the oil lasts long enough then you wouldn't have to worry. That's basically what you'd want to do. Onyx Supreme says, Scotty, why does my car shake when I turn the engine off? 2011 Chevy Equinox. The most common reason a car shakes when you turn the engine off is you have braking motor mounts or transmission mounts because that's supposed to hold them in place, and if you shut it off and it blump, 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 then you got broken motor mounts or broken transmission mounts. Now, if you mean you turn it off and the engine's still running and shaking a little bit and then it finally shuts off, that means that you probably have a fuel leak somewhere, and fuel is still leaking in the engine, so what's called diesels, it's running even though you turn the key off. In that case, you'd want to figure out what was wrong. But if it just, you turn it off and it just shakes and clunks, that would be a broken motor mount. You can watch my video, how to fix motor mounts on your car, Scotty. It'll show you how to check them, how you can replace them if you want to. Vince Castellano says, how do I know if my tranny is going bad? Would a fluid change make a difference? '07 Lexus IS50. Well, it might. Now, a transmission, generally, they start to go bad. You'll feel it. It'll shift bad, like it'll go first to second. Or, conversely, you take your foot off the gas, and when it downshifts, it jerks, downshifting and stuff. Now, generally, something's going on when that happens, right? But we mechanics, at least good ones, have very fancy scan tools. And when somebody thinks they have a transmission problem, the first thing I do is plug in my super fancy scan tool, go to the transmission section and run tests. And if there's codes for certain things, I can say, hey, maybe you're lucky. It'll say shift solenoid 3 is going bad. Then you just drop the pan, put a new third shift solenoid in, away you go, and it fixes it. Cars are all electronically controlled today. A lot of times they don't actually need rebuilding. They just need a solenoid. But we can check all that stuff. And we can even check, even if they don't have any codes, I can tell you if it's starting to go out because we get all the shift speeds with a good scan tool. So it'll show how many milliseconds it took to shift from first to second, second to third, third to fourth, fourth to fifth, fifth to sixth, if it's a 6-speed. And you can see by analyzing that shift time, say the shift time is now 2.4 seconds, third to fourth gear. Well, that's a big problem. That's way too long. That it's taken too long and that there's an internal problem. That's how you can tell technically. Andrew Hopkins says about a 95 Crown Vic after 5 years. Starts in idles and you rev it up. There's horrible hesitation. It barely moves. Okay, let's start. It's sat for 5 years. Numero uno, do you have any idea why it's sat for 5 years? Most cars are sitting for 5 years because they got a pretty serious problem, right? Do you want to buy somebody else's problem? In most cases, you don't want to buy somebody else's problem. So let's say it just ran okay, but somebody just didn't drive. Somebody died. It was a estate sale or something. Sat all those years. The gasoline turns to gunk. So I would advise at least change the fuel filter first. Then run some really good fuel injection cleaner on the system. Now, my friend Bernie in Albuquerque runs ATS and he has a fuel cleaner. It's relatively expensive, but you put it in the gas tank and it does a good job cleaning. It could be there's a bunch of gunk in there. Now, it might even get so bad that you're going to have to drop the gas tank, have the tank cleaned out. It might be full of crud, and also replace the fuel pump if that's the case. Now, if you're curious, hey, almost running out of gas, get a borescope, stick it in the tank. If you see a bunch of sludge in there, you're going to have to drop the tank and either get it cleaned or replace it. Casey Sauce says, Scotty, what do you recommend buying? A 2015 Altima with approximately 147,000 miles for $6,000 or a Camry with 150,000 for the same price? I'd buy the Camry, hands down. Now, I do have to say, one has to be honest about this stuff. If you're buying a used car, you got to have it checked out by a mechanic. Who knows what kind of shape something is in. Now, Toyota Camrys are so much better than a Nissan Altimas. It would make your head spin, especially a 2015 Altima. The Altimas were pretty good cars back 2-3 decades ago, but now, no, they're not all that great. But regardless, you have to have a mechanic check out a used car. You don't know if it's wrecked, flooded, stolen, what the story is. We mechanics with our fancy equipment, they can't hide anything from us. We can tell you within an hour if it's a good car or if it's a pile of junk. Noe Blitz says, Scotty, those Honda 2-liter engines are equivalent to those 1.8-liter engines Toyota used in the cars in the 2000s. Pretty much immortal. Would you agree? Oh, I agree entirely. I do have to say, in terms of running and long-lasting, Toyota 1.8 engines are insane. My 30-year-old Camry has a 1.8. My old 81 SR5 had a 1.8. Our Matrix has a 1.8. They just run and run and run. And conversely, Honda, they're 2-liter engines. They're even stronger engines. Those things can just go. Look at the Honda S2000. The early ones had a 2-liter engine and put on them more horsepower than a Porsche. Those things were insane. Honda makes probably the best engines in the world. They can run a really long time. And those 2-liter Hondas, they still have 2-liter Hondas in some of them. I would much rather buy like a 2-liter Accord than a 1.5-liter Accord that had a turbo in it. It's going to last a lot longer with a 2-liter. Nicey577 says, Scotty, why would a car AC not throw cold air when it's parked? And as soon as we drive, it seems fine, but not cold enough. Okay, that's the classic sign of one of two things. Either the cooling fan isn't working on your radiator, and then, of course, when you're sitting, the cooling fan doesn't blow, so the pressures get too high, and the compressor won't run. There's a safety thing that'll shut it off. Once you start moving, especially say you're going 60 on a highway, you got plenty of air blowing, and it blows cold. Even more common, if you're low on refrigerant, it'll do the same thing. When you go faster, it'll blow, but not cold enough. And then when you're stopped, it hardly blows cold at all. So have your refrigerant level checked. You're probably just low on refrigerant. All cars lose AC refrigerant. All of them. Over time. They all leak a little bit. Toyota, maybe it'll take 10 years for it to leak enough for you to go. A Honda, it might do it in 2 or 3 years, and you just have to keep filling it up as it leaks out. James Self says, with my AC fully charged, what can cause the AC to freeze up? There's only 2 real things that can cause it to freeze up. Inside your evaporator core, inside the dash, there is a sensor. And when you're running your AC, if it sees that the temperature of the AC evaporator that makes it cool gets below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, it's supposed to turn the compressor off so it can't get colder. If that sensor's broken, then it can get 30 degrees, 20 degrees, then it will freeze up because normally the humid air comes in your car. The AC makes it cold, but it also makes it rain inside because it dries it up. And all that water drains under the car. Well, if the evaporator gets to be 30 degrees, 24 degrees, it'll freeze and then it freezes up. Numero uno. The other thing is, if somebody worked on your car and screwed up and they got water vapor inside your AC system, that'll also make it freeze up because then there's water inside with the refrigerant, water vapor, and it'll just make the whole thing screw up. Those are the two most common reasons. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.